Virginia Tech, 2007. An ordinary Monday at Virginia Tech turned into the deadliest college massacre in the United States. 32 lives lost, dozens injured, and questions that remain unanswered. Cho Seung-hoi, a 23-year-old South Korean, suffered from selective mutism and depression. His violent writings worried professors, but there was never any serious follow-up. The system failed. April 16, 2007. Cho first murdered 2 students in a dormitory. Hours later, he entered Norris Hall armed, chained the doors, and fired for 11 minutes, killing 30 more people. When police broke in, he committed suicide. Professor Liviu Librescu, a Holocaust survivor, died blocking the door so his students could escape through the windows. Others faked death to survive. The entire country was in shock. Gun laws were tightened, and emergency alerts were implemented on campus. However, many believed the lessons weren't enough. Virginia Tech showed us what happens when we ignore the warning signs. 32 crosses remain on campus, a reminder that the silence of a troubled young man turned into screams that still resonate in America's memory. Sandy Hook, 2012. 20 children, just 6 and 7 years old, never returned home. In minutes, an elementary school in Newtown, Connecticut, became the scene of one of the most painful massacres in history. This is episode 2, Sandy Hook, 2012. 20-year-old Adam Lanza lived in isolation with his mother. Diagnosed with anxiety and depression, he spent days locked in his room, obsessing over guns and online forums. His mother, Nancy, tried to bond by taking him to the shooting range, never imagining that those same weapons would be used in the tragedy. The day of the massacre, December 14, 2012. In the morning, Adam shoots and kills his mother at home. He then drives to Sandy Hook Elementary School, armed with an AR-15 semi-automatic rifle and 2 handguns. He breaks the glass entrance and opens fire in the hallways. He entered the first-grade classrooms and mercilessly shot students and teachers. The massacre lasted 11 minutes. When he heard the police arriving, he committed suicide. The death toll, 26 dead, including 20 children and 6 adults. Victims and survivors. Teachers Victoria Soto and Dawn Hochsprung sacrificed themselves trying to protect the children. Some children survived by hiding in closets and bathrooms. Outside, desperate parents waited for the list of survivors. The silence of those who didn't appear was the most devastating blow. Consequences. The impact was global. President Barack Obama wept on national television. The Sandy Hook Promise movement was born, led by parents of the victims, which to this day fights against gun violence. Although laws were passed to ban assault rifles, Congress blocked many of the reforms. Sandy Hook exposed the fragility of the system. A young man with mental health problems had access to a military arsenal. Sandy Hook was a turning point. 20 small white coffins paraded through the streets of Newtown, reminding the world that gun violence knows no age. And even today, more than a decade later, the question remains, how long? Final images of teddy bears, flowers and candles lit in memory of the children. Uvalde, Texas, 2022. For 77 minutes, dozens of children were trapped in a classroom while they called for help, and the police waited outside. 21 lives, mostly 10-year-olds, were snuffed out in the tragedy that outraged the world. This is episode 3, Uvalde, Texas, 2022. Salvador Ramos, 18, lived a life marked by bullying, a broken childhood, and a troubled relationship with his mother. He isolated himself on social media, where he posted disturbing messages and photos with rifles. On his 18th birthday, he legally purchased 2 AR-15 assault rifles and hundreds of rounds of ammunition. No one stopped what was coming. The day of the massacre, May 24, 2022. Ramos first shot his grandmother in the face. She survived and called for help. Minutes later, he crashed his truck near Robb Elementary School and entered through an unlocked rear door. 11:33 a.m. He locks himself in 2 fourth-grade classrooms with dozens of children and teachers. He opens fire indiscriminately. The children hide under tables, others call 911, pleading, "Please come quickly." The police arrive but remain in the hallways. For 77 minutes, nearly 400 agents were on the scene without intervening. 12:50 p.m. Finally, a Border Patrol tactical team storms in and kills Ramos. The death toll, 21 dead, 19 children and 2 teachers, and 17 wounded. Victims and survivors teachers. Irma Garcia and Eva Mireles died shielding their students with their bodies. One child survived by covering himself with a classmate's blood to feign death. Outside, desperate parents confronted the police, begging them to come in and save their children. Aftermath. The outrage was national. Later reports confirmed that the police response was a catastrophic failure. The shooting reignited the debate over gun control. President Joe Biden called for a ban on assault rifles. Shortly after, Congress passed the most significant gun reform in 30 years, stricter screening for youth and funding for mental health and school safety. But in Uvalde, the pain lingers. Parents continue to demand justice and clear answers. Robb Elementary School never reopened. Uvalde wasn't just a massacre, it was a demonstration of how inaction costs lives. Children who died waiting for help. While police stood on the other side of the door, 77 minutes that will remain etched as an open wound in the history of the United States.
The town of Santa Fe, Texas is praying tonight in the aftermath of the nation's latest school shooting that claimed
Santa Fe High School, 2018. It was an ordinary morning at a Texas high school. Students were chatting in the hallways. Teachers were preparing for class. But the routine was shattered by the echo of gunshots. A gunman opened fire on his own classmates and teachers. Within minutes, 10 people were killed and 13 were injured. This is Episode 5, Santa Fe High School, 2018. Dimitrios Pagortzis, 17, was a quiet student, described by some as a loner, but with no serious history of violence. However, he harbored a silent resentment. Using weapons that belonged to his father, a 12-gauge shotgun and a .38 caliber revolver, he secretly planned the attack. He even carried homemade explosives, although not all of them detonated. The day of the massacre, May 18, 2018. Shortly after 7:30 a.m., Pagortzis entered the art area of Santa Fe High School in Texas and opened fire indiscriminately on students and teachers. Chaos erupted. Students ran, hid under tables, and others barricaded themselves in classrooms. The attack lasted nearly 30 minutes. Pagortzis fired in cold blood, but did not commit suicide or face an immediate outcome. He surrendered to the police inside the school, later confessing that he had planned to leave certain students alive to tell their story. The result: 10 dead and 13 wounded. Victims and survivors. Among the victims were both students and teachers who tried to protect them. Teacher Cynthia Tisdale, 63, died while helping her students. A group of young people managed to escape by hiding in a dark closet throughout the shooting. Their subsequent accounts describe the desperation of hearing gunshots and screams just feet away. Aftermath. The Santa Fe massacre sparked a new debate in Texas and across the U.S. about gun control and the responsibility of parents who leave guns accessible to minors. Unlike other shootings, the gunman survived and was arrested, facing capital murder charges. In the community, the trauma was enormous. The school remained closed for weeks, and upon reopening, strict security measures were implemented, including armed guards and metal detectors. Santa Fe was proof that violence doesn't distinguish between big cities and small towns. 10 lives were snuffed out in a place that should have been safe, the school. And in every empty desk, a reminder remained that horror can arise even from someone sitting in the same classroom. Final images: memorial with flowers in front of the school entrance, solemn music in the background. On August 27, 2025, during Mass to mark the start of the school year, about 200 people, children, teachers, and families, were gathered at Annunciation Catholic Church and School in Minneapolis. Suddenly, bursts of gunfire tore through the church's stained glass windows. Within minutes, 2 children were killed, and at least 17 people were injured. The suspected gunman was found shot dead next to the building. The chronology confirms that the shooting occurred shortly after 8:30 a.m. Those present ran, ducked behind pews, and sought refuge in the hallways. Some teachers even covered students with their own bodies. The victims were identified as 8-year-old Fletcher Merkel and 10-year-old Harper Moisky. Outside, memorials began almost immediately. Flowers, stuffed animals, letters, and 2 bicycles leaning against the fence. Who was Robin Westman? He was 23 years old and a former student at the same school. In 2020, he had legally changed his name from Robert to Robin, and local media reported that he identified as a woman. His mother had worked at the school until 2021, suggesting a long-standing connection to the school. Subsequent investigations confirmed that he posted videos and a manifesto online. In them, he displayed weapons and references to other shooters. Some of the magazines were even marked with hateful phrases. A former elementary school classmate reported that as a child, he had made comments in support of Hitler. And according to police, he was obsessed with other instances of violence. That day, he carried a rifle, a shotgun, and a pistol. He fired 116 shots in minutes. All indications are that the arsenal was acquired legally. Authorities classified the incident as domestic terrorism motivated by hate. However, the manifesto combines hate speech, self-satisfaction, and ambiguous phrases, leaving the investigation into a definitive motive open. So far, we know what happened and who was behind the attack. But much remains to be understood. The impact on the community, the unanswered questions, and the lessons we must learn. The names that will not be forgotten are Fletcher and Harper. Children ages 8 and 10, their dreams suddenly interrupted. At the vigil, thousands of people gathered with candles, flowers, and prayers. The community was devastated, but also united. Religious and civic leaders organized ceremonies, readings, and free psychological support. A fund was established to support families with funeral and medical expenses. Robin's mother had worked at the school until a few years ago, suggesting a long-standing connection, although no clear motive has been established. No accomplices have been identified. Regarding his identity, it is confirmed that Westman had been living as a woman since 2020. However, experts and authorities insist his identity was not the cause of the attack. The origins lay in violent thoughts, an obsession with other shooters, and the hatred expressed in his digital materials. The published manifesto includes contradictory messages. On the one hand, hateful phrases against religion. On the other, references to a personal desire to cause harm and notoriety. This duality is key to understanding these types of cases. A mixture of superficial ideology and destructive narcissism. The weapons, acquired legally, gave him the ability to fire more than 100 shots in minutes, and the chosen location, a school mass, reflected both the opportunity, a crowded and vulnerable space, and a possible symbolic intention against faith. There are still things we don't know. His current medical diagnosis, whether anyone close to him had direct clues, or whether there were digital communities that fueled his thoughts. What we do know is that every sign counts. A video, a disturbing comment, a manifesto, they can all be warnings. That's why specialists insist on strengthening the connection between school, family, and mental health, on reviewing laws regarding access to high-caliber weapons, and on centering narratives on the victims, not the aggressor.